Hello, everyone. So happy to be with you today. And the question is, have you gotten everything that you ever wanted in your life? You have achieved, you have accomplished, you have what people would say that looks perfect on paper, yet there's still always something missing. I'm here to talk about specifically that because there's two things that are completely tied to that feeling. And it's that we carry a spoken identity that it's not connected to a felt identity. And the felt identity is the one responsible to making you feel fulfilled, joy, content in life with everything that you have accomplished. Yet, there's not much talk about this. So if this is something that it's getting your attention, stay connected with me because I will be covering a couple of concepts and also how to transform that felt identity from the root in order for you to enjoy your success, enjoy your achievements, your life as you dreamed that you could. Let's begin. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk about is first, there's this fixation and excitement behind completing personality tests. It's always fun. I get it. I've done it. Yet, much of the personality test focus on your adult outcomes, responses, reactions, which means that your consciousness is very tied to it. But it's measuring the end result of many things that are happening subconsciously. However, the felt identity, it's tied to that subconscious self. It's tied to that subconscious reason and root of why we do things. We everyone that sometimes we're not even aware of. If you noticed patterns in your life that even if you're aware of and you try to change them, yet do you feel that you struggled and sometimes you do better, but then it feels like a roller coaster because you feel that you have outgrown some patterns, but then eventually something happened in life that puts you back in that same situation or that same feeling, then it's because of that felt memory. And let me talk a little bit more about what a spoken identity is. A spoken identity is what we consciously are aware of who we are, how we talk, how we relate, our preferences, everything that it's within our conscious. And many times, people that are working through personal development to grow in their personal development journey, they are working through that spoken identity because they have identified things that don't work for them. Yet, the felt identity is more connected to the foundational felt memory that we all carry subconsciously since the moment that we're born. Think about it this way: a child who's born doesn't have access to language as we know it as adults, right? So that doesn't mean that that child cannot communicate. What it does is constantly be connected with their emotions and they experience the world, what's safe, what's not safe, through those emotions. If the environment, it's playing soothing music, it's the baby's being fed, then what those emotions that that baby will carry, it's constantly signaling that this is safe, we're okay, we like this, we enjoy this. And that that experience gets stored by making connections with a room, with a voice. Let's take it for example as the mom. However, if let's say that same baby gets exposed to an argument without knowing like what's the reason for the argument, but because of the elevated tone of voice, because of the frequency that the emotions that baby is experiencing, and knows that something feels off. So what it does, it's also storing everything in that particular moment in a storage unit that will determine whether it feels safe or not around this person or around this room. And I'm using these hypothetical examples. However, all of this happens without language. So all of us carry a huge stored unit with memories that form core identities that are all in felt experience, felt memory that is stored in our body. But as we grow and we start to integrate and incorporate language into our lives, all of those felt memories are not necessarily accessible to ourselves through consciousness, right? So it's not that they're forgotten; they're still very present. And there's a very solid foundation of what feels safe and what doesn't feel safe for a child. Yet, as we start to be introduced to language, we learn meanings, definitions based on language, which leads to a disconnect between one and the other. Because if consciousness, right, we're introduced through language and we're acquiring a list of definitions and meanings of what are things in life, it's not necessarily going to connectly linked, like consciously speaking, to our reactions, our behaviors, which are all rooted in safety of what we learned, of who we are. Because true personality that it's founded in genes is only 30% of who we are, but most of who we are is founded in environment. So our personalities can be very, very different depending on the environment that we grow up. Yet, I'm not sure if you're seeing kind of like the connection between the difference between the felt memory, the felt identity versus the spoken identity. This is life. This is life, people. And my brain is trying just to make sure that I keep it into structure. But stay with me. So that's the difference between felt identity versus spoken identity. The spoken identity is tied to consciousness and to the language as we learned it. And we make sense out of things based on the language that we learned. For example, as a child, I grew up with many siblings, and I have parents that constantly needed to go out to work, and many times we had to learn things on ourselves, and we struggled, yet we had to figure things out on our own. So for me, that necessarily wasn't something traumatic, but I learned at an early age that I needed to be resourceful in order for me to accomplish things. And being resourceful meant, as a child, that I probably did not have someone to help me at that time. So I learned to do things on my own. And I do remember times where I really wanted help, or I did not have the understanding of something, yet there wasn't necessarily someone to provide me clarity. So I learned to make it or break it, right? To find a way regardless of. As an adult, I never made a link between this experience and my self-sufficiency, my self-resourcefulness. I probably did, but not necessarily in a way that most matter, which is the root that felt memory had was founded on survival. And that's a key component to felt identity, because it meant that if at any point I needed to reach out for help, I was shaking that safety foundation by relying on others, because it meant, but what if they say no? What if they say no? So I did make the link between I had to do everything by myself. So therefore I became self-sufficient and resourceful. And I took pride of that. But I never dissected its root, that felt identity root that led to so many moments as an adult making decisions to never ask for help. Because in reality, what that meant was that if they said no, then I would be abandoned, that I wouldn't have really no one to rely on, that I wasn't worthy of being supported. And not making that connection leads us to exceed, to achieve, yet anything that it's driven by survival will lead you for sure to experience life as something's missing, not enough. That's why for high performing individuals, high profile individuals, they make amazing things in life. They accomplish amazing things in life, yet they hit that invisible wall where they feel like, this is it, there has to be more. Because this foundation has not been explored. And not only that, the most important part that needs to happen is to transform that survival driven foundation into a unconditional loved, growth driven, abundant driven foundation. That regardless if I ask for help or not, I'm worthy, I'm okay, and I am more than worthy to ask for help, regardless of. And this process, it's what's missing in many, many self-development transformation. Because the more that we rely on personality tests, on spoken identity, without giving ourselves the opportunity to go deep into that felt identity, it doesn't matter how much you work on things. If the foundation is not shaken, guess what? At some point, it will never be enough. At some point, fulfillment will not be experienced as you so much desire. The intimacy, the connection level, and I just use that example, but this can be done in so many different ways. This can show up in many different ways in your life. So how can we shift from a spoken identity to a felt identity? And not only to shift that, but to identify what's the root of our felt identity. And if it's founded in survival, which more likely is, how can we transmute it? How can we transform it? How can we create our identity, our felt identity, into one that leads us to feeling fulfilled, to feeling happy, to feeling connected? And to do that, once again, requires self-awareness. For you to constantly observe, accomplish many things, and you have something that you're accomplishing, right? Once you accomplish that, observe what comes up in your mind, right? What comes next? Is it a thought that says, okay, is this it? Because that is it. It's an opportunity for you to make a choice to use mindfulness along with nervous system regulation for you to say, I am very proud of myself. I'm going to celebrate this moment. I am great. This is something great that I just did. But not only saying that, the nervous system regulation piece means to also integrate the emotion of pride, the emotion of happiness, the emotion of celebration. Because when it's not connected, that felt identity will continue just to reign and reinforce many of the behaviors that, even though if they are celebrated and acknowledged in society, it's going to lead us to that internal disconnect to everything that we desire to feel in life. Because after all, what we really want, whenever we want accomplishments, whenever we want houses, travel, everything, is because we're seeking a specific feeling. We want to feel happy. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel satisfaction with life, pride, yet not focusing on the emotion as felt memory. When we accomplish things, it's going to continue just to perpetuate patterns. I hope that this is helpful for you. Please let me know, connect with me. What are your thoughts on this felt identity versus spoken identity? Because I'm really passionate about it, and I genuinely believe that this is what's going to take us, humanity, and this is what's different with ChatGPT, AI, everything that is going on with artificial intelligence. This is what defines us as human, is the feeling plus the consciousness that we are integrating into our lives that can help us transcend limitations, fears, mental health conditions, and many other barriers that we continue to experience in life as high performers and high achievers. Let me know your thoughts, connect with me, and I'll see you next time.